So, action. This is my dad, and he's going to be talking a little bit to us about the 50s. He was
Yay.
about 7-ish. What do you
No,
say?
I was born in 53, so between 53 and 60, okay? As a little boy, I kind of like had a little bit of a clue, and then when I got older, I realized what was kind of like going on, so I know a little bit.
So, what would you say your favorite part of the 50s was? Like, from what would you remember?
Uh, it was kind of simple back then. We didn't have any videos, we didn't have cell phones. Uh, we just played outside. We had simple things. We played sports. We sled during the wintertime. Uh, it, Life was quiet. There was no, we didn't hear of any wars going on. We didn't hear about any fighting in the streets. It was, new music we were getting exposed to called rock and roll, okay? And even at 7 and 8, we, heard about, rock around the clock and songs like that.
Yeah, I like that song. Um, so, let's see. What made it like so peaceful? Like, besides the wars, like, what time was it?
It was just, there again there wasn't, you know on TVs there were probably maybe 3 channels. Okay, you had, there was no, CNNs or hard news stations at the time. You had your daily newspaper. You had books to read. You went to, you went to see a movie, and it was all, a lot of it was in black and white. Okay, color just came to be like in the later 50s, early 60s.
So,
So that I mean, just little things like that. Watching something from in black and white, and then seeing something like, you know a movie or a TV station like, Disney, okay, in color. That simple things like that put a smile on everybody's face.
so I guess my next question would be like the clothing that they wore. How does it differ from today's era?
It was kind of, you have to compare it to like what the 40s were. The 40s, everybody kind of like covered up, okay, and everybody looked prim and proper. And then like in the 50s, okay, you know, fewer people, like youths, okay, kids, they didn't wear, ties as much. Uh, you know, you wore shorts. You kind of like started letting your, maybe it was more in the 60s, okay, that you kind of let your hair down, okay, but you know, it wasn't as strict in the 40s, okay, and then when the 60s came, the 60s wasn't as strict as the 50s, and on and on. So things got a little bit, you know, looser, so to speak.
So, what were some popular brands that what
Popular what?
brands? brands.
Oh, brands.
Mhm.
Uh, like for what? Like eating, drinking, or,
No, for like clothing.
oh, clothing. Oh, Buster Brown shoes. Uh, that they were two-tone colors, like brown and white, in the 50s. Okay. Uh,
Did they look like bowling shoes? Because I
Yeah.
looked them up.
Yeah, yeah. Daddy, I got a pair like around Easter every year. Uh, Brands, I don't know. I remember my father smoking Lucky Strike unfiltered cigarettes. Uh, Budweiser beer, I think. Not that I smoked. I was only like 8 years old, 7 years old. Uh, I don't remember too much.
So would you say like back then they didn't know as much medical stuff, like how people got lung cancer easier?
No, no. There was none of that. Uh, it I mean, I don't think so. I mean, uh, I know there was a strain, some type of strain in the late 50's or so, but I can't even remember that. I mean, there was stuff that people had to think about polio. Uh, that's nothing now, but they were worried. People used to get polio, and there was a polio vaccine and stuff like that. But no, I mean there was, what people realized back then, that I remember in the 50's, is if you got sick, okay, a lot of doctors used to make house calls. You'd call up, okay, you never went to go to their office, okay, well you did sometimes, okay, but a lot of doctors, I remember my doctor made house calls to our house. That's pretty wild.
I know that you have a friend, my Uncle Tony, who had polio.
Yes.
Could you like maybe elaborate on his struggles or his journey through that, if you remember anything?
No, I don't. I mean, I met Tony when I went into high school, because his best friend was Lou, who went to school with me. He was in our high school, uh, but Tony never let it bother him. I'm sure it did, okay, but he always had a good disposition, always, okay. Uh, the, it affected his right foot, so when he drove, he used his left foot. I mean, no big deal. He just slid over and used his left foot, and he would be able to. My father used to watch him. Okay, he used to be able to run faster with whatchamacallit, with his
Crutches?
okay, than some people would be able to walk. That's how fast Tony was. You know, you adapt.
Too bad he wasn't alive when I broke my leg.
Yeah. Oh, he would have given you lessons.
Yep.
He would have given you lessons. He would have gone up and down the stairs faster than I could walk going up and down the stairs. You know, Tony could always keep up with us walking, okay, with his crutches.
But that would be probably natural since he was on it for
He was on it
his
from,
whole life.
I think, like 4 or 5 years old. You know.
And for part 2, that is my dog. Her name's Rosie.
Stop.
Okay, so parenthood.
Parenthood. Oh, okay. So as you're growing up, okay, you kind of like fall back on, well, how did your mother act? Stop. Go back. How did your father act? And a lot of times, kids growing up, okay, when they become parents, they fall back on, well, this is the way my dad acted, okay, so, and then they tweak it as they go along, okay, I started out, and I will still yell, okay, and don't forget, my father, okay, and his JJ, what was he?
Police officer.
Police officer, okay, and what was my JJ?
Police officer.
Police officer, okay. So.
And you were too.
So we police officers, for the most part, don't tend to be wallflowers and quiet. Okay, but the more years you become a parent, you tweak, your way of parenting. Okay, to
Bless you, dog.
bless you. Okay, so yelling doesn't, that's not the way to parent. So you have to do more explaining, okay? But sometimes when you need to, you have to be a parent and say, this is the way it's done, okay? And this is the way it's going to be. And for the most part, Daddy's not too bad, right? Okay. I have my moments, but I always say, if I have my moments, okay, it's not because of you and it's not because of Kenny, okay? I'm just getting my point across. What else you got for me?
Schooling, how did that differ from today?
What?
Schooling is different. I know that there was no buses, so.
There were no buses. Okay, so it was, you kind of like went to school with people around you in that neighborhood, and that's all and not that was a bad thing, okay, but you didn't interact with kids from a different part of the town, okay? Kids in an urban setting, okay, where it was crowded, okay, and you had more diversity, okay. The kids in the outskirts, okay, you didn't get that involvement, okay. It's better now, okay. You're kind of like isolated with your own group and with your own people. So it wasn't until maybe you went to college almost, because the grammar schools were in that section where you all lived. Same thing with high school, okay. The high school was in that same area, depending upon the where and what in that particular part of your city, okay, the same kids went to. And it wasn't until like college where you got to see other kids and their backgrounds and that you got exposed to.
So I know that Nanny didn't drive. So you guys had one car,
We only had one car.
which was common in the 50s.
Yep.
What was a popular car brand?
Popular car: Chevys, Buicks, Fords. Those were like the top three. Okay, and 80% of drivers had either a Chevy, a Ford, or a Buick. So.
Was Corolla popular? Cause
A what?
a Corolla, I remember Mama had one.
Corolla was, yeah, that's part of the Corolla. Part of, I think, Toyota, right? Toyota Corolla. No, I mean there was no such thing as Japanese cars.
Oh, that's Japanese car.
Corolla, yeah, that's part of like Toyota Corolla. That's a Japanese car. No, there were no that I don't think that happened until maybe late 60s. Japanese cars started creeping in.
Because I know that there was tension between Japan and America.
Well, we were at war.
At the 50s?
No, but I mean, Pearl Harbor, the bombing in 1941, that was Japan, and that lasted until like 44. But ever since then, they've kind of like been an ally of ours. Okay, and we needed them because we really didn't have a contact, so to speak, in the Pacific. And that's when the Cold War started with Russia, we wanted to be friends with neighboring countries of Russia. okay, such as like Great Britain, okay, such as you know, France, okay, and on the western, on the eastern part, now what borders Russia on the eastern part, the Pacific Ocean?
Baltic Sea, China.
Yeah, I don't know too much about, you know, my geography, okay, but China wasn't a big what you call it, military might back then, okay. In Europe, it was Russia, okay. It was Russia, especially after World War II. They kind of like took over what Germany had built themselves up to, okay. So Japan obviously was a lot closer to Russia than California was. So we wanted to make sure that, you know, Japan was on our side, okay, and then, you know, we're going to be on your side, Japan. What else you got for me?
Like, how did you go from being quote unquote enemies to quote unquote friends with Japan?
What else you going to do? I mean, you're not going to be at war forever, okay?
But what was like the turning point?
What was the turning point? The turning point was we not only dropped one atomic bomb on Japan, we dropped 2 atomic bombs on Japan. Okay, they didn't want any part of a 3rd atomic bomb. Okay, they probably should have like raised a white flag after the first one. I forget which is which. There was Nagasaki
In Hiroshima.
and Hiroshima. There you go. And if you saw pictures of the devastation afterwards, there was nothing left standing. No buildings, nothing. So again, that was like the beginning of the atomic age. Okay, and people all over the world saw what just one atomic bomb could do. Okay, and you know, right after World War II, that's when the atomic race began between all countries. But for the most part, it was Russia and the United States. So, you know, Japan said, well, it's best to be friends with the United States now than the enemies, okay? Because we saw what could happen. So yeah, we'll be your friend.
And that's about it. That's about the time that I want to cut it to.
Okay.
Because I don't want it to be too long, you know.
Okay. All
So
right.
thank you for sitting through this interview.
With your dog, yes. Okay. Thank you, Rosie.
I think Rosie wants to leave.
Okay.